Calibrations and Exercises by Gregory Benford. Originally published in the number 9 edition of an ongoing anthology series called New Dimensions in April 1974, which republished it in their Best of New Dimensions in November 1979. It also appeared in a collection of the author's stories called Matter's End in 1995. Read by Darrell T. Smith II for my channel, Quasar Spectra. Calibrations and Exercises. 1. Alpha awakens 18 minutes earlier than usual. He nudges Beta up from her muzzy slumber. They make love self-critically. Beta holds that signs of impending interpersonal problems appear first in nuances of caresses, intersections, rhythms. Alpha feels his moves and vectors being calibrated by her. He comes with a curious pressing jerk. Beta makes a deep fluttery sigh. Their timed rising signal begins to buzz. Once up, they dispatch their morning tasks with brisk efficiency. Over breakfast, Alpha discusses the option clauses in their bonding contract. They are in the second year of a 5-year agreement, which specifies in gratifying detail the terms of their living together. Alpha asks if she wishes to renegotiate anything. Beta remarks in a slurred mumble that he is blocking his transference to her with all this talk. He retorts that he has always regarded psychoanalysis as a disease masquerading as a cure, and then leaves for work, bristling, feeling things have come to a draw. Question: is the score truly even? 2. As he reaches the foyer of their apartment building, a man is trying to insert a sheet of plastic into the lock of a side door. Alpha is dressed conservatively in gold and red. The man wears fashionable denims. As he turns toward Alpha, warned by the muffled slide of the elevator doors, Alpha sees that the man is a Mexican-black mixture, the most common minority associated with crimes of violence in California, Alpha recalls quickly, taking fully 37% of the raw totals. The man glowers at Alpha and says curtly, "Delivery man." Clearly a time-buying ruse. Alpha steps out of the elevator, calculating the situation. The plastic slips home. The lock clicks free. The Mexican black yanks the door open and darts through it, into the maintenance zone of the building. Alpha feels a sudden urge of adrenaline, a prickling and tingling as he stares at the vacant doorway. His body's response has come absurdly late. Sheepishly, he walks to the house telephone and dials the 4-digit code, well memorized, for security. As he is talking, a hooting alarm begins. Alpha picks up his briefcase and walks out onto Post Street and goes to work. Problem: Alpha is 38, in reasonable health, with a blood pressure ratio 143/101, in the supine position. Distance from the elevator to the house telephone is 4.3 meters. Calculate A, his adrenaline rush rate, B, time to inform security, C, using A and B, estimate the distance the Mexican black burglar has run in meters before the alarm sounds. 3. At work, Alpha reads the monthly issue of Predex, the professional journal for sociometricians. There is a small item about Alpha's recent development of a sophisticated interfacing matrix for slide-through future projections. The matrix output carries explicit indicators of any value-free assumptions made earlier. Predex compares the matrix in a chatty way with the legend of Croesus. Alpha smiles. Abstract. Croesus frequently consulted the oracle of Delphi on matters of state. The oracle told Croesus that if he went to war against the Persians, he would destroy a great country. He went to war and soon destroyed his own. See index for backgrounding references. Alpha reluctantly puts aside Predex and sets to work. He is evaluating the load factors of water usage in San Francisco, a chronic problem. The largest fraction of water is flushed away down toilets. Alpha, as a leading sociometrician, has the power to recommend new controls. San Francisco lies within his regional jurisdiction. Alpha spends the morning calculating the optimal flush in a mean-sized private home. Devices in the water closet already keep the maximum mandated flush below 2.3 liters. Alpha soon proves, from parametric analysis, that substantial savings of water, 26% mini-max, can now come only by not allowing users to flush after every use. The only plausible scenario is to disallow a flush until after 3 urinations or 2 defecations, whichever comes first. Alpha is pleased with this result. It promises a considerable saving when factored through the water grid of the Bay Area. Problem: calculate the mean urine retention rate for an adult male, age 38, blood pressure 143/101. What is the average flush rate he requires? How does he feel about this? 4. Alpha remembers an aphorism attributed to Murray Gell-Mann. Quote, "Everything not disallowed by the laws of nature is compulsory." End quote. Gell-Mann intended this sentence to describe nature's richness, the precise implication of physical laws. Alpha feels this statement should apply to social sexual rules as well. His contract with Beta does not specifically rule out his seeing other women, after all. Thus, quitting work an hour early, he meets Delta at her walk-up apartment. She is younger than Beta by 8 years, and her waistline is formed of exquisite hyperbolas. Viewed from the front, the two curves symmetrically pinching into a minimum separation of 33 centimeters. Yet, when Alpha lies at that place where all parts of her converge, head cradled between thighs, his mind still slips ahead to his planned trajectory. Seeing Delta at this time of day provides a reasonable cover in case Beta should become jealous of the amount of time he spends with Delta. Despite her theoretical lack of concern and possessiveness, Alpha senses that Beta can be tipped over the edge on such a point. With Delta's salty musk aswarm in his nostrils, he regards this issue of sins and sensibility. He can plausibly maintain to Beta that he became trapped in a traffic jam and spend the extra time with Delta. Private vehicles are now outlawed in San Francisco, Alpha's first major triumph, but the press of buses still slows things to a crawl during peak load times. Problem: A. Calculate Alpha's time of arrival at home, given that Alpha and Delta do not pause for the preliminary cocktails they usually share, margaritas. Allow 28 minutes for their copulation. B. Calculate the arrival time with margaritas but with no foreplay. C. Redo Part A, adding an air pollution alert from a methyl plant explosion, which halts all commercial buses for 19 minutes. D. Estimate the credibility of Alpha's claim upon reaching home that his delay was due to Part C and had nothing whatever to do with Delta. 5. On this particular Saturday, Alpha meets his son, 9 years, 4 months, the only testament to his first bonding contract. They participate in the Dad's Day Mercury hunt. Into the sewers of San Francisco they descend, orange flashlights spiking through the murk. Mercury, now exceedingly rare, commands a price in excess of $1,000 a kilogram. In earlier, wasteful, uncaring times, commercial-grade mercury was poured down sinks and drains to dispose of it. The heaviest metal, 13.5 times the density of water, it immediately sought the lowest spots in the sewer system and pooled there. Alpha and his son wade through the coiled tunnels. Other fathers and sons shout gaily in adjacent tubes, and their lights cast sparkling reflections from the wrinkled skin of the flowing waters. His son is clumsy, splashing through puddles and bumping his head on the low, curved ceilings. Their conversation sputters along. The acoustics of these concrete tubes seems to make each word have a hollow center. Alpha catches his boot on something and spills into the scum of a standing pond. He curses. His son bends down. In the flashlight's cone, they see a seam of tarnished quicksilver. Alpha has stumbled on a crack where two pipes butted unevenly. In the crack, mercury gives off its smudged glitter, a thin, trapped snake worth at least $400 new. Alpha slaps his son's back and for the first time that day feels a genuine surge of emotion. Later, outside, they win 4th place in the Dad's Day competition. The profits from collected mercury go to the city's extensive program for abandoned children. As they stand in Golden Gate Park, sipping from steaming cups of coffee, feeling the chill bite of the air, Alpha talks and jokes with the other fathers. There is much skeptical discussion of the new emergency provisions enacted that week by Congress. Alpha nods earnestly to what the other men say. He waits for a suitable pause in their conversation and then says, "If pro is the opposite of con, what's the opposite of progress?" His son laughs earnestly at this. Question: does Alpha actually agree with the joke? Does his son? 6. He arrives early for his self-defense class. The instructor is not there. She is rarely on time, a fact which Alpha always notices. It is one kernel in his simmering resentment of her. Thoughts of the Mexican black man in the foyer swim up to the conscious level once more. In the stale-smelling gym he trundles out the kick target, a padded wafer of canvas which turns about its base as a fulcrum. He adjusts the target. Somewhere he has read that the average weight of muggers in the city is 84.6 kilograms, the average height 1.73 meters. He raises the tan canvas target to where he estimates the throat of a 1.73-meter-high man would be, an idealized spot hanging in the cold air, a disembodied Adam's apple. Alpha backs off and comes at the target from the side, using a high kick, heel turned outward to take the impact. He misses clean. Alpha switches over to his frontal kick, striding innocently toward the target and then whipping his knee up, lashing out and up with his foreleg. The ball of his foot smacks the target with a satisfying thud. Alpha springs back, balanced and ready, eyes narrowed, anticipating the canvas bag's recovery. The instructor comes into the chilly room. Alpha feels oddly uncomfortable, anxious, sheepish. Exercises. Estimate Alpha's height in meters. Estimate the instructor's height. 7. Beta's agri-research project is not going well, and fine lines of strain develop in her relations with Alpha. He offers to apply some of his techniques to her problems, on an informal basis, of course. Beta purses her lips and nods. Her eyes flicker once and then become unreadable. Alpha sets to work. Beta is supervising forced growth schemes to dramatically raise food production. They have tried high CO2 greenhouses for the plants with indifferent success. Similarly, a backburner project to breed for larger leaves, thus increasing their efficiency of sunlight use, seems to have mixed returns at best. Alpha tells Beta to drop these programs and deflect the staff from them to better ideas, primarily fabricated foods. He advocates pushing ahead on the single-cell protein, a football-sized gray dollop grown in synthetic ethyl alcohol. Similarly, glucose can be made from sawdust. Alpha smiles at her, sure of himself on this new ground, and taps his pencil decisively on their organoform dining table. She frowns. After the fabricated goods are grown, Alpha goes on. They can be puffed, salted, sugared, laced with high-fat derivatives for taste and used to adulterate the corn-based or potato-based mass giveaway foods. This will keep the nutrient density at a respectable level in Northern California, he calculates. Problems of zinc deficiency, which worry some of the staff, can be worked out later. Beta blinks, nods, says nothing. Question. Estimate the probability that Beta wanted any advice at all. 8. By clever management of a trip to the eroding eastern seaboard, Alpha arranges to return early and thus spend a night with Delta. They eat at a Cambodian restaurant, fluffy vegetables, a sauce like air, dense layered cakes of a white meat, and return to her apartment. It is a high encased space above the city. Alpha fluxes the wall and watches the headlights swarm like yellow hornets in the circle below. Delta appears to him as an eddy of warmth. Outside, Christmas is coming. Shoppers mill and scatter below. On the gray monolith of an office building, a non-denominational angel appears, shimmering. He murmurs to her that she is enough to stiffen a priest, even in these outmoded, discounted holy days. She blows him a snog. He merges into billowing gold cloud banks of philosophy. Is this Delta or Beta? Later, in the thin light of morning, he lies beside her. Delta it is, indeed, and feels seeping from him the soft consolations of chemistry that pad the hard skeleton of facts. A. That his hair fell out at age 26 from anthracene in the meat preservatives of that era. B. But still, given A, a perma-wig suffices. C. Then, from complications with the anthracene, he lost his teeth, and D. Now has a removable denture, molars of solemn hardness, eternal, an implied rebuke to the easy soft slide of skin around them. Alpha blinks himself into the new day to comfort a fresh problem. He has not told Delta of his chemical hair, his ceramic mouth, how to avoid it. His comfortable, familiar life with Beta suddenly beckons. The known, the anxiety-free. But here he is, and, vanity stretching thin, he does not want Delta to see these signs of deformity, of aging. He rolls smoothly out of the gurgling bed and pads to the sink which lies within view of her. To remove the denture, yes, scrub it quietly, getting into the browned crevices, artfully irregular, flawed, human-seeming. In those pockets lurk the telltale rancid odors. If she smells them upon arising, she will know all, or so he imagines. He runs the water fast and hunches over, back turned, so that if she does look, she sees mostly ass and bathrobe, a sight of implied unwelcome. He relies on the politeness that prevents outright staring at a person performing acts of maintenance or plumbing, however intimate the two of them might have been only moments before. He makes noisy use of the toothbrush, fumbles it into place, and scuttles bedward. All, he notes, without arousing interest, without causing an eyelid to flicker. Question. Does she know, actually? 9. Alpha has seen the future and found it, by and large, scruffy. Unless, of course, proper methods are employed. Technique is, after all, the whole point. Every major culture has had its ways of reading the future. In ancient Rome, he is fond of pointing out, divination of the future was the function of the College of Augurs, which was still flourishing as late as the 4th century after Christ. Ranging in size from 4 to 16 members, the augurs worked principally in Rome itself, close to the center of power, advising senators, generals, even emperors. Their primary method was to ascend a hill at midnight, to survey a particular quadrant of the night sky and seek omens in shooting stars, clouds and storms, and the flight of birds. Other techniques the augurs employed included the casting of lots and the examination of the entrails of animals, especially disemboweled for the purpose. Alpha realizes that his earnestness on this point makes him vulnerable to quick stilettos of wit from Beta, but it helps him in the weekly meeting, such as this one. The board reviews his flush-quenching proposal. Echo Accounting gives it a 93% reliability rating. There are few side effects. One of Alpha's rivals, a ferret-faced man, counters that trying a 2 defecation minimum between flushes in an office building will cause hostile intergroup relations. Alpha points out that he is only proposing a program for private homes. Office environments, where 43% of all flushes transpire, are excluded. The usual argument breaks out among the board: enforcement or education. Alpha adroitly sidesteps the issue, reasoning that one makes only enemies that way. Problem: estimate, using standard forecasting methods, the impact of a 2 defecation minimum on adolescent dating practices over the next decade. 10. Alpha accompanies Delta and Beta to the estuaries of the San Francisco Bay for a holiday of boating. He notes that the influx of seawater into this region has exceeded the allowed perimeter space and makes a note to refer this to enforcement. He and Beta watch a cloud sculpture being carved by a high, darting flittercraft. The pilot chops, prunes, extrudes, and slices the taffy-white cumulus until it takes on the trim features of Lantana, the current 3D star. Next to her he sculpts a being, a serpentine tail, exaggerated fins, knotted balls of cotton for feet. The act is admirably timed. As the flitter shepherds the remaining puffs into place to shape the snouted face, the eyes turn ominously dark. They expand, purpling, and suddenly lightning forks from a rolling wall of thunderheads that splits the dragon in two. The sullen clouds churn. Claps of thunder roll over Alpha and Beta. Somehow he and Beta end up taking shelter under different boating sheds. Delta comes stumbling in from the spattering avalanche, half-soaked. They stand a slight distance away from the rest of the holiday crowd and watch the downpour. Alpha savors the scent of first rain. Like popcorn and tobacco, the smell is somehow always better than the reality. As he stands, hands in pockets, Delta tells him. Haltingly at first, she relates how she has just signed a 3-year contract with a traveling executive. The executive will stop by when he can at unpredictable intervals. The man expects her to always be ready, though not necessarily always alone when he appears. So she and Alpha must see each other less frequently and be more cautious. She does not wish to offend her mate by flaunting her relations with others. Delta wishes things were otherwise, but she really wants to make this contract work. It's time she was beginning a series of more substantial relationships. She says all this with a becoming smile. Her voice is warm and soothing over the drumming of the rain. Alpha's face clenches. She begins to apologize. He says, "Things happen. People do things, and that's it," meaning words are ineffective. Only actions matter. She has acted, and now he has only words. She murmurs something, but Alpha reels away into the rain, his mind a question. Is the story true, or is she trying to get rid of him? 11. His visits to his father are periodic, but not frequent. Before leaving the apartment and the brittle silence that hangs between him and Beta, he wanders restlessly to the kitchen and finds there a raw cabbage, partially cut away. It squats on a sideboard, resolutely natural, as mute rebuke of his advice to Beta about fabricated foods. He slices into its waxy layers and plucks out a bit of the center. He eats it. The sting fills his mouth. He feels in this small fact some new connection to Beta, and kisses her warmly on the way out. He takes the Bay Area Rapid Transit to the MacArthur station and changes to go south and then east to Pleasanton. The BART car rattles onto the long bridge which spans a crevasse, mute memory of the quake. The light and airy filaments flicker by. Alpha reflects that there is a lot of truth in suspension bridges. The impending visit to his father nags at his mind, and he turns to reading. He finds it difficult to know, reading popular news magazines, whether one is really thinking about things or simply rearranging one's prejudices. He suspects most news is reported so as deliberately to blur the distinction. He reads of the exodus of the million from India, freighters jammed with starving human cargo, bound for Australia, in a gesture of defiance against the food withholders, the white devil farmer murderers. One ship has sunk already. Sabotage? Accident? A sly portent from the Australian Navy? He suspects the latter. Indeed, a scenario cast last month predicted as much. The eternal rule of sociometrics was that all island cultures newly entered on the stage of power are aggressive. Japan, England, dim Crete. Now, Australia. It followed as the night the day. Alpha sniffs, turns the page, and reads that what Nietzsche really meant when he said God is dead was that the orgasm had been separated from social usefulness. He closes the magazine abruptly, just as the BART car pulls into the station, a mere block from the square white place that encases what is left of his father. The visit begins with Alpha's ritual offering of forbidden fruits, chocolate almonds, a half bottle of cognac, small enough to hide from the nurses, a snog mystifier. The old man rambles on in a softly intense voice, recounting his clearly seen visions of the 1950s, life histories of people now dead. His eyes are small and cloudy, framed in a cross-hatching of wrinkles that shift and crinkle as his lips move. Alpha feels himself slipping away as this man, born in 1935, instructs him in how to live with stories from ancient eras to illustrate his points. Alpha tries to interject, to make the conversation two-way, but this mottled raisin of a man meanders on, pausing only to crunch an almond, awash in temporocentricity as he shuffles through implausibilities about auto racing, black and white movies, new dances, great men glimpsed from a distance, using a firearm to kill an animal for food, cigarettes, and Alpha flees, a smokescreen of excuses disguising his abrupt liftoff and exit, something running cold and weak through him as he hurries to the BRT station. He resolves, in the antiseptic BART car, to stop and see Delta on the way home. She seems older now, in the enfolding hand of her executive. His infrequent visits find her brisk and urbane. Her conversation a smart rattle of wry observations, insider's jargon, epigrams. He reminds her now, in daydreams, as standing hip-shot, the cradle of her abdomen tilted, jaunty. The distance between Beta and Delta is widening. He feels himself suspended between them. He glances at his watch. Sighs. Problem. A. Given random motion and access by Delta's executive, how does the probability of an unpleasant surprise, while Alpha is in her apartment, increase with time? Exclude the executive's lunch hour. He always eats with business associates for tax purposes, transit time, and occasional illnesses. Here, occasional translates as 9/365ths of a year. B. Estimate the probability that the executive is the Mexican black in the foyer. 12. Months later, Alpha takes the bus to work. He glides in a smooth arc around the perimeter of the new public works area, carved from the old Sunset District. The new facades gleam in the lancing sunlight. Alpha recalls vaguely that once there were porches here dotted with people, children playing with sticks and balls in the street, an occasional hardy blackened tree, small grocery stores, signs in the windows for at-home businesses, knots of dungareed men, hands in hip pockets as they talked and squinted in the sun. Where are they? The streets are clean, safe. Why are the people not here? There are benches provided, far better than uncomfortable stoops and porches. Children could play on the lanes of fresh grass. Alpha frowns. He glances up. A face is bracketed in a window above. The man seems swarthy, familiar. It is the man in the foyer. At that moment, the bus surges forward and Alpha stares straight ahead, unsure of what to do. Shortly thereafter, Beta announces that she wants to terminate their contract prematurely. She agrees to pay whatever unusual expenses this requires of him. A news item in the fax carries a photo. The Mexican black. He has been charged with assault, convicted and sentenced to 3 years in a labor gang. Predex asks him for a major review article to be accompanied by Alpha's photograph. He graduates to a more strenuous self-defense class. His policy on water use, including the flushing mandates, becomes a regional law. His father dies suddenly of cardiovascular arrest. Delta is rejected by her executive, her contract bought off. After a week of slammed doors and dropped forks, she makes herself available to Alpha twice a week. No contract demanded. His problems, which once loomed as a denumerably infinite set, have now shrunk, as though exponentials, to 0. Difficulties disappear, hyperbolically, and yet, Alpha feels that something is missing. Question: can he calculate it? You've been listening to pre-1990s speculative fiction readings with a highlight on science fiction by Darrell T. Smith II. Please consider clicking the donation link in the description box. Thank you so much for your time and your imagination.